South Africans are becoming more conscious about planning for the future, and appointing the right executor is a key part of that process. While trust is important, competence and care are just as crucial when drafting a will. Yet choosing an executor is often one of the most overlooked decisions. Joining me this week on Business Q&A is Gary Wiseman, CEO of Momentum Trust, to unpack why the role of an executor matters so much and what to consider when appointing one. Gary, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So as the introduction alluded, why is choosing the right executor such a critical decision when drafting a will?
Well, Gary, choosing an executor is a very important decision because administering an estate is a complicated process. It requires specialist skills. So typically an estate would take 9 to 12 months to wind up. So it's going to be a relationship that you have with somebody for quite a while. And so I think for me, in choosing an executor, probably make sure that you choose somebody who has the ability to do the work. And secondly, ask the question, what would your recourse be if something goes wrong? So is the person a member of, say, the legal profession or another professional body? Or maybe are they linked to an organization that has a reputation to uphold, so that if you do have an issue that needs to be addressed, it will be done so properly.
So what kind of skills or qualities should people be looking for in an executor? Is it enough to simply trust someone? Is specific competencies a specific issue?
So for me, I think there are two main attributes that makes a good executor. The first is that the person must be competent. They must know what they're doing. They must be able to do the work. But secondly, they must have the empathy that's required to do the work. You engage with people at a very sensitive time in their lives, and it's important that the executor understands the impact of the estate administration process on those people.
So some people you talk to say, I just choose someone from the family. Is that a good idea generally, or in which cases should one be looking for someone with more professional competencies?
So my short answer would be that in most cases you should be supported by a professional, and often the master will insist on that. Sometimes families will get a family member involved, either as an executor or a co-executor. If they want the family member to try and do the work, it's usually to try and save money. But our experience is it usually ends up taking much longer. They don't really know what to do, and there's a lot of frustration and anger that is caused as a result. If you choose a family member as a co-executor, normally the reason for doing that is they say that the family member has close proximity to the heirs and beneficiaries. But the downside is that the professional executor is probably going to do all of the work in practical terms. And we do have situations where the executors need to present themselves in person. And so that can give rise to complexities on its own. So our advice to clients is that if you are comfortable with a professional that you do trust, appoint them as the executor. I think that would lead to a good practical outcome. But if you really do have a need to appoint a family member as a co-executor, then choose somebody who would be able to support the process and understand that there may be some things that they have to do during the course of the estate.
Gary, what kind of difference does it make appointing the right kind of person with legal or financial competencies or skills, when appointing an executor or winding up an estate?
So I think maybe let's start with the will and the drafting of a will. Legal skills. The person must be able to express themselves in legal terms and convey clear and direct instructions. Secondly, the way people are married can have a material impact on how the estate is wound up. So, for example, a spouse in a second marriage in community of property could end up having half of the estate going to the new spouse by virtue of the marriage in community, and the rest going to children from the previous marriage. And as you know, often the two they're not on such good speaking terms. From a financial perspective, the most important thing that we do encounter is that there needs to be enough cash or liquidity in an estate to cover costs and to pay special cash bequests. We do find that in many instances that isn't the case, and we're forced with the decision of whether to sell assets or not in order to finalize the estate, and that in itself often leads to some kind of complexity.
So in your experience, what helps families avoid conflict and confusion, when it comes to someone passing? Because obviously, and I mean, those are obvious human emotions involved, but how can an executor contribute to helping smooth and get that sense of closure?
Well, I think the attributes of the competent executor that I mentioned, I think the person needs to be competent, and I think they need to have the empathy that is required. The executor's job is aided greatly by having a clear and well-considered will that is capable of being given effect to. So my advice is, before you even get to your executor, make sure that you take the time to draft your will and that you truly understand how it's going to play out in practice. Secondly, don't assume that your thoughts are going to be understood by everybody reading your will, particularly in circumstances where you have a reason for leaving your assets in a particular way. Remember that when your will comes into operation, you're no longer around to explain what you meant. So as an executor, if I'm given a clear will that is properly thought out, that explains interesting or slightly different decision, it certainly makes our lives much, much easier.
Well, we're going to have to leave it there, Jeffrey. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
That was Jeffrey Wiseman, CEO of Momentum Trust, highlighting how professional guidance can make all the difference when it comes to choosing the right executor. Stay tuned for more programming right after this.